Hello, Vegas. Good afternoon.
Hey, everyone.
Hope you've had well, don't need you, Julian. Hope you've had a good conference so far, and thanks for coming to our session. Today, we're going to teach you about efficient dashboard design. This session's called Amp Up Your Vizzes. We're going to have a lot of fun. Now, as you can tell from the funny sounding words that are coming out of my mouth, neither myself, my name is Tom Christian, I'm joined here by Julian, neither of us are from these parts. Woo! So we are from a country that partially invented design. I mean, if you look at that flag,
Beautiful.
pretty good. I mean, we practically invented red, white, and blue. We got there first.
Yeah, we did.
This is a country also responsible for the likes of Daniel Craig,
Ed Sheeran,
David Beckham,
Ron Weasley,
the entire cast of Game of Thrones.
Prince Harry.
But now, we are pleased to present to you Nickelback.
So, fun fact about this slide, actually. To come to Vegas, if you're not from America, you need to present a topic, and Tom and I presented this topic. That's all we said. We just sent this and said we want to do some stuff around dashboards, and lucky enough, they gave us the session. There's a little bit more to the slide as well. We wanted to show you why we're doing this session. So Tom and I like to build, as you can see, pretty cool dashboards. We're lucky enough to work here, so we get to build Nintendo Vizzes and palm it off as training, right? Yeah.
Mostly Nintendo Vizzes, I think. So today you will take away 3 key points from the content that we're presenting to you. The first is, what is good design? What does that actually mean for the dashboards that you're creating, the stuff that you're presenting to your own audiences? How can you apply the topics, the tips and tricks that we're going to teach you today? And of those tips and tricks, we're going to teach you the fastest way to get to the desired outcome, the beautiful and efficient designs.
Thank you, sir. So as fun as this is for us to do, we do have some goals. We want you to leave here knowing more than you came in. So a couple of those goals, and if you have any of yourself, and you have some questions at the end and we didn't cover it off, we're going to do some of that about 10, 15 minutes at the end. So the first one is understanding design.
It's a picture of me up there, if you can't tell.
And obviously, we want you to be able to find the how. So we're going to give you some information on where to go and what to do. We're going to teach you some tips and tricks. Tom and I have learned quite a lot over the few years we've been at Tableau now. We've also learned the mistakes not to make, so hopefully we can help you avoid those. I think most importantly, we'd love for you to actually use what we're talking about today. Get those Vizzes in Tableau Public. Rock out with your Viz out.
In public.
In public, yeah.
So I can't really see the room. They've got these bright lights that are shining directly into our faces. But if I was to ask by show of hands, how many people in here have a design degree?
Well, we've got a couple.
Okay. A couple of people. Neither Julian or I do, as a fact. And that's really it when it comes to this session. Tableau's given us all a new opportunity, a new challenge that we have to face head on. We're expected by the people that we're creating content for to create things that are beautiful as well as informative. It's a good challenge to have, to be perfectly honest, if you came from the Excel world like I did in the past. That's a real noticeable thing. People can accept just bog standard tables in Excel, but they don't accept that from Tableau. UX and UI isn't anything new, but there are a few key principles to take away from the whole area and apply that to your own work. And those key principles are, does your content, your dashboards, leave a good first impression? Is it digestible and clear? If your audience goes to your dashboard, do they understand what they're seeing? Your dashboard should also feel familiar. People expect to see things presented in a certain way, and they're going to expect to see all of you present it that way. Next, does it delight the people that you're presenting it to? Again, referring back to the fact that Tableau's made us all designers, this point's probably the most key. People get happy when they see their data presented in a way that's visual, exciting, and for the most part, new for the audience that you're presenting it to. And lastly, and probably most key, is does it distract from the message that you're presenting? We'll keep referring back to these as we go through the topics today, but best to keep in mind. This is also something that internally we're happy to admit that we make these mistakes all the time. This is something that strikes fear into the hearts of people in teams that me and Julian work in. Earlier in the year, we were expected to use this as a method to log our own time. We're a sales-orientated business. We're expected to keep track of what we're doing. And this is what we rolled out to the team. I think, Julian, your feedback was?
Yeah, they basically said, what do we think of it? Because no one was really using it. It's functional and everything, but it's pretty ugly. It looks a bit like Windows XP. Nothing against Windows XP, but it's a little bit old, right? So I told them that, and they basically told me, tough, it works, so we're going to keep using it, but we changed that.
So I took it upon myself and said, we are a design company as well as a functional reporting company, and changed it up a little. And actually, this version acts in the same way as the original, but it's just set up in a completely different way that allows people to follow the same steps in a more approachable way. And actually, people, I think, ended up using it.
Yeah, definitely. Way more.
And with that, we'll go into our first topic, Mr. Kelly.
Indeed. So we have a few topics for you today. Obviously, we're going to start off in what I believe is the most important, which is the discovery process, building a story. So there's a common misconception, in my opinion, that if you build it, they will come. You get some data, you end up with the viz, you share the dashboard, but it's false. Okay, it's not going to happen. There needs to be some work put in. You need to have at least a concept. Okay, so there's some ideas in here that I think are key to a concept. What is the data? What are the questions and answers? What is the theme? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. I had to do it. I was writing it out, and I was like, this needs to go in. That's not part of it, by the way. You don't need to know what is love.
If you do know, please tell us. It'd be really insightful.
So these are the key points you need to use. Keep an eye on what they are. Jot them down if you want. But don't care too much about the order. It's not that important. You don't have to start with the data. Maybe you have a theme or a concept in mind. Maybe the questions and answers will change. But those 3 points are ones you need to always consider. So let me show you an example of how you can end up with something very different, still by keeping these concepts in mind. So this is a brilliant viz. This comes from Makeover Monday. For those of you not familiar, chuck that in as a hashtag in Twitter. You'll find a lot of data. You'll also find a lot of visualizations. One of the coolest things of that is you'll see very different visualizations from the same data set. So this is from the Tour de France. It's a great viz, shows a lot of information. This is also Tour de France, another great viz, maybe not as much information, a little bit more visual. I think the previous one is probably a little bit more technical. But the key to both of these, regardless of the fact it came from the same data, was what the people who were building it were considering. And that's the audience. Who is going to be using these dashboards? This one's probably more for someone who maybe has never really heard of the Tour de France or is just curious about the viz. It's going to draw you in because it's very visual. You're now curious about what's in there. The previous one's probably for someone that knows about it and is looking for those key stats and statistics and figures. So the key, and I'm going to repeat this a lot, is who is the audience? Because everything I'm showing you, that's always what matters. So let's talk about the importance of data, the importance of questions, the importance of the audience. So the importance of the data may be very obvious at first. You may have a look into it and see the key points, the things you want to show in the dashboard, in the sheets, with the answers and the questions you're looking to create. But those questions and answers can change as you go along. The theme probably will stay the same. Let's say you have a sports team, something along those sorts of lines. You don't yet have the data, but you've got a good idea of what the questions and answers will be. Maybe your favorite player, or how the team's been doing over the year, or some comparisons. So the importance of the data may change as the questions and answers do. The thing that will never change is who you're building it for. Does that question and answer that you enjoy, that's interesting to you, will that be interesting to someone else that you're presenting this to? Are you presenting this to 2-3 people, or are you looking to get thousands of views on Tableau Public? Because you'll need to change depending on how you do that. I'd like to show you now how I did everything I've been speaking about. So we do use Tableau. We do practice what we preach. So does everyone remember Pokemon Go last year? It was like this game, really popular, right? Yeah, Pokemon, no one plays it anymore. So I quite liked the game. For any of you not familiar with Pokemon, it's basically about these creatures, and you catch them, put them in a ball, and you force them to fight other creatures. And it sounds really bad when you say it out loud, but it's quite fun. And when this came out, you went around and you caught these Pokemon and what have you. So I thought, I'm going to do a viz on Pokemon. So I had my theme. I didn't yet necessarily have my questions and answers. So the first thing, obviously, I did was look for data. So I've got my theme, now I have my data. And the data set included all the information about the little creatures, the Pokemon, in there. And I knew it would probably be a good idea to allow someone to see the statistics of those creatures. They have things like health stats and things like that. I also thought it'd be pretty cool, because in the game, you have to battle other creatures, as I said. It's lovely. So I wanted to do a comparison, some form of way of being able to compare one against the other. And I played around with a few different viz types, as you probably will. I originally started with a bar, reversed the axis, kept them together. It didn't really make me want to click it, so why would anyone else? So I basically trumped for a radar chart. I thought this would be pretty interesting to use. I got told off by many people. It's definitely not best practice in terms of visualization. But what I'll do is I'll show you the final product now. I think you'll agree it was a pretty good choice. So in the game, you start off with this character. His name's Professor Oak. So I thought I'll use the story to tell someone a story as they move through the data as I had. Oops. Yeah, put this in presentation. I also wanted to build a Pokedex. This is a product inside of the game that allows you to analyze the Pokemon in detail. I just thought it looked cool. Why not? You then have the character leading you through, and in the game, you select your team. So I wanted to kind of keep that process. So anyone familiar with Pokemon is already familiar with my dashboard, even though they've never seen it before. So here you can select the different characters, just like I had in my previous slide, with a lot more formatting. Once you've chosen the characters you'd like to choose in the game, the character, Professor Oak, will lead you through to battle. So here's my radar chart in a much cleaner form. So now the person, the audience, who's interacting with my dashboard can compare two different Pokemon. And then finally, the last slide just leads them off to finalize. It's the image of the game screen. So I had the theme, I had the concept, I got the data, I thought of the questions and answers. I tried a few different sheets that never made the cut. I just didn't think it added to the story. That was key for me when I was building this. If it didn't make sense, I didn't see the point of putting it in. Okay. So to summarize, you can start before you have data. In fact, I'd encourage you to. It leads you to find good data if you're not looking very specifically. You may find things you didn't know existed. You can finish looking very different than when you started. In fact, you probably will. That's not a bad thing, as long as it keeps encompassed with the theme. And always, always remember your audience. That's key to everything you're doing when you're building that dashboard, whether it's for your boss, your friends, your colleagues, or to get your Tableau Public Vizzes up.
Thank you, Julian, for probably the most comprehensive analysis of Pokemon you guys will probably ever see. So you've heard about that importance of context and bringing the dashboard itself to your audience. I've done something probably, I suppose, against the audience here, which is I've added a U to color. I've been unapologetically British throughout this session.
There's no way it was getting removed.
So sorry. So color is probably the easiest way to add that level of visual perception. It's also one of the most powerful forms of visual perception. The first method you can employ to use color into your dashboards is altering the hue of that color, the actual color itself. If you take a look at this range of colors, the fact that those green and purple have been switched, they actually really clearly stand out in contrast to all the other colors around them. When we're designing things in a dashboard, you're actually doing this every time you select your particular colors within the color palette. The other method that you can employ is the intensity. Just by reducing that saturation, you can see just in the word intensity how the T and the Y at the end stand out in comparison to the others. Color itself can actually be the difference between a very powerful, impactful story or a message lost in translation. Take this example very quickly. The fact that there is that slight purple and slight green applied to this simple bubble chart immediately makes you think of grapes. And this is a visualization comparing the top variety of grapes grown. That powerful splash of color is all it takes for the audience to understand what this is showing. In Tableau, we give you a lot of responsibility when it comes to color. And as much power as we give you, it needs to be used responsibly. In 10.2 and 10.4, we actually give you even more options for applying color. In 10.2, we gave you legends per measure. So when you're creating your heat map tables, you can actually separate out the columns and color each column individually. This is a piece of marketing from when we released 10.2, and you can already see how scary this becomes. In 10.4, we actually introduced the concept of independent shading for different filters, for different objects, everything that's present on a dashboard. So you can color things individually and make them appropriate to what the color is around them. But it does lead to some more interesting outcomes, and something that we experience all the time as we help our customers design the content they're creating. And there is something I like to see, or like to describe as when I see it in the field, is unicorn puke. The way that I can best describe unicorn puke is when you're starting out on your Tableau journey, you first of all get used to the concept of drag and drop. And then you realize how powerful drag and drop is. And then you create some interesting visuals. Once you get comfortable and you start running, you start adding color. You discover the color menu. And then you start adding color. And when you're designing sheets in its independence, you can add color that, again, in isolation, looks very good. But then when you bring it together in a dashboard, it looks a little bit like this.
It's your first dashboard, right?
That's my first dashboard, right there. It's never this bad. I can assure you it is never this bad, maybe once or twice, but never really this bad.
Should have handed those solar eclipse glasses out at the beginning.
I should have done. I'm very sorry that you all had to experience that. So how do you overcome this color problem? The way that you can beat this is by using probably one of my favorite colors, gray. I spoke to somebody that works in our design and development team, and one of the best pieces of advice they've ever given me is design everything that you do using grayscale. To show you how that looks in an example, if I take this particular example, you see this shows the wealth inequality in the United States. That splash of purple immediately draws your attention to the message that they're trying to convey. It's showing the increasing inequality. It's the wealth of the top 1% over time. And you can just get drawn in by that particular color. All the other gray and white just fades into the background. It's really, really powerful. But I know you're saying, Tom, there are at least 50 shades of gray. Which particular shade should I use? Here are 3 of my favorites. You can use a combination of any types of gray, but it's a great way to start out and just add that bit of color to your dashboard. Dimming, reducing. But the question always comes back. It's, you say, Tom, I'm a dashboard designer. I have to do this week in, week out, every day. The data changes. How can I make everything gray and then pick something? I'll show you a little technique that I like to use. So you can actually make this gray concept dynamic. There are a number of different ways you can do this. Calculations in Tableau are your friend. One of the methods that I've approached is actually creating a set. So you can see by using a top 4 set in this case, I've just said group the top 4 together. Just to describe what this dashboard is showing. This is the number of tweets about individual people during, it was a period of not so much British passion, but this is during Brexit. And this particular window was something called the Flotilla incident. I suggest looking it up. It's very embarrassing for the entire country. So,
You started off so well.
yeah. I tried to put that flag there and make up for it, but it's all gone, all that passion. So again, we're looking at which of those are in our top 4. And then we can use a calculation to just say, if the value is within this set, then give me their name, otherwise they go into an other group. When I put that onto color, you can see we've got our 4 different colors for the very famous Bob Geldof, George Osborne, a politician called Michael Gove. He looks a bit like a fish. And again, Nigel Farage, he seems to pop up in America, and I'm very sorry for him as well. But this is great, because now this is a set. If I change this time frame, we've now got Boris Johnson and David Cameron that are highlighted as part of our top 4, and James Dyson as well, great vacuums. But everyone else has become gray. So it brings your audience's attention to those top people within the view. And you can do this in a number of different ways as well. You can apply LODs to get to the same result. But I like this set method. It's simple. Something I can also suggest that you do, it's the way that I learned Tableau, is go out into the community. Some of the people that are actually here at this conference have created incredibly beautiful stuff. And if I show a few examples of how they've employed that grayscale approach, drawing out the attention to, in this case, particular national parks. In this one, trying to show where ozone layer was unhealthy, I believe. And this one from David Perez. He won our Iron Viz over in Europe. He has a slightly bluey gray, but again, it's the same concept of fading that color into the background. I remember seeing this visualization when Iron Viz came up and thought, this is incredible, that's a fantastic use, and I'm stealing it for my presentation in Vegas. So we've already covered gray, but how do we pick specific colors? We've made the select color window a little easier to get to, this particular window, so you can start picking and defining your colors. If you need a similar color, pick a particular color and then dull it down with saturation. You saw it with intensity. It's a great way to highlight particular points. Something I personally like to do when I'm working with customers as well, if somebody's not sure on a way to get a particular color set, is if your company has a fantastic logo, then start borrowing colors from that logo. They've already employed somebody and paid them thousands of dollars probably to create a specific logo. So
Actual designers.
Actual designers, not people like myself and Julian. So use the tools of their trade. A few other options as well. There are great color palette generators out there within the community, the color tools by Interworks, or Coolers, a color palette generator that lets you select a color and then you get a variety of colors that complement it. It's really, really useful. you can then save those particular colors and use it as a reusable color palette. This is actually, once again, a Pokemon. So a particular Pokemon, we've stolen their colors. This is all going to be Pokemon themed. Again, we're really, really
Sneaking
sorry.
it in.
So to summarize this one topic, color is an incredibly powerful weapon, but you should use it wisely to draw focus and show meaning in your work. Gray is actually one of the most impactful colors that you can use in dashboard design. And you should also use complementary colors for your audience's sake more than anything.
Always think about the audience. You were listening.
I did.
Okay, so next section. That wasn't a mistake. This section is about why text matters. So if I wasn't here to introduce this, you'd have had no idea what this next session was. So text is important. Excuse me. We obviously work in a visual product. We design charts and graphs. But the titles and other aspects of that is a key element to any dashboard design. And that's the next part of my section, titles. So they need to be true, informative, and relevant. You don't want things like this, where it misleads you, misinforms you with badly titled subtitles. So there's some exercising goes on in that film, but not the kind that is leading you to believe them.
I think Leo should have won an Oscar for Love Boat as well.
Yeah.
He was robbed.
He could definitely fit on that chair, at that door as well. So we don't want to leave people feeling frustrated. This is the key. We don't want to do something like this. So we're all very used to consuming via the media now. In fact, it's where most of our information comes from. And news articles as well that follow this practice. I'm guilty of clicking on those types of news headlines, right? I want to find out what happened. But we don't want to do that. We don't want to misinform. We don't want to mislead. We don't want to provide clickbait. We're not trying to get clicks. Yes, okay, we want to get views. But if we go about it the wrong way, no one's going to trust us. They're not going to trust us if they're our colleagues. They're not going to trust us if it's our Tableau public site. A title in something like Tableau is to get them to do a few things. It's to know what the sheet or dashboard is. It's to understand the data within. And most importantly, it's to get them to actually click and investigate. And if they're looking around for information they believed was in this because of a misinforming title, they're going to be very frustrated. So here's an example. I went back to my Makeover Monday to find my dashboard of the one on the left here that I found. Great dashboard, superb information. It's a little hard to read the text. Some of you at the back are probably struggling, I'm sure. So I decided to do a little bit of what we call a polish in Tableau. That is to say, take something that someone's already done and kind of put our own experience into it. So there are some things that I still prefer, actually. I like that the waffle chart is long ways on that because it's in sync with the text above it that highlights what's underneath it. I changed that because I thought of my audience, and I realized that I needed the text to be larger, so I needed the bar chart to be taller. But you can now understand what's going on. The text is informing you. It kind of wants you to read the data, get the information, get the answers from the questions you have. And the color really is contrasting now to the black, so it's very easy to see, using the color legend, what's going on with the blue, teal, and purple. Tooltips. I'm a big stickler for tooltips. In Tableau, we take exams internally to show that we're using the product. We all use Tableau. We do a bronze, silver, and a gold. And a gold is generally for people like Tom and myself in a technical role. A silver is doing everything we're talking about today. You find data, you have a theme and a concept, and you build out a visualization and a dashboard. You present it to people like myself, and we test you on it. And I'm always really disappointed when people have spent hours building out a dashboard, and they've forgotten about the tooltip. They leave a very basic tooltip, or they don't even realize its importance. So I failed them. Doesn't happen too often, luckily. So this Viz is a great example of tooltips because that's all it is. We've got a fantastic title. We know what it's about. It's the top 100 song lyrics. We know where the data is from, and we know who did it. But it's pure tooltips. It wants you to investigate. It's a fantastic looking Viz. It's almost too much, and you want to kind of navigate around. So the word "the" is used the most out of all songs. And then things like of and if you're curious, type that into Tableau Public, top 100 song lyrics. Baby and love are pretty high, as you would expect. So let's see what this looks like in Tableau. I've built a visualization to combine everything I've just been talking about. Okay. So the title indicates what we're looking at. We're looking at profit, sales, and shipping. The color legend indicates what the values are. But there's no labels. There's not much else in there to really distinguish what's going on. So the tooltip, as you'll notice, will change depending on the color I'm overlooking. The size will also change as well. And one of the greater new features we recently added into the tooltip was being able to actually select a value that highlights the rest. So something that's of importance to me, I don't have to go outside the dashboard. The flow doesn't get broken. I'm staying within there. Managing the tooltip is very, very easy. And again, something you really shouldn't overlook. So this is using a few little tips and tricks. It's basically only giving me the value that's showing up when I hover over it. And then it gives me the size and color that's been distinguished. For those of you that are curious, when you're in the tooltip, you can insert values that exist inside of the view. So you'll notice here's a lot of those values that I have in my tooltip. They're not part of the dashboard. Go ahead and chuck them on detail, and you can do a few cool things with them without affecting your visualization. Okay. That's not my slide.
So I snuck this in there as a great example of how to use tooltips. So I think we were going to say that if you do CrossFit, you have to talk about the fact that you do CrossFit.
Yeah, how do you know if someone does CrossFit? Don't worry, they'll tell you.
And I'm now telling a room of 2,000 people. The important thing here is we spoke about an example of trying to use labels and text to guide an audience through. And this is something that I just tried to guide that audience and took away all the axes and brought the annotations into the view so you could identify what they actually mean in an easier way for people that had never experienced the sport before.
Yeah, annotations are a great one. There's a lot more to text than the things I'm covering, but we could probably spend a while just doing that section. A top tip for you is when you're looking at that fancy font that you want to include, make sure it works in the browser after it's published. I've done it myself, I published it up, and it just defaulted back. It's fine, but it wasn't what I expected, and it kind of broke my theme. So to summarize, text can be key, it can be additional, or not used in any major way. But it's always important to have something. You need to guide, inform, or show them what is in the visualization, where to go, how to click. And tooltips can be way more than just info. We've seen a little bit of that at this conference, I think. But make sure you don't leave them out.
Thank you, Julian. So the fourth and final topic we want to take you through is you've seen how taking the context of a story is really important. You can use color to highlight a meaning or importance. You can then use text to guide somebody through that journey. But then the final thing you're actually doing is the visualizations themselves and how you lay out those visualizations. The Financial Times actually tried to tackle this problem. So if I refer right the way back to the start, I said that our audience almost expect to see data laid out in a particular way. And they created this visual vocabulary. So actually what they're saying is, depending on the type of analysis you're doing, so is it a deviation type? Is it distribution? Is it a ranking of some sort? You should use a particular chart type for that analysis. Again, the reason is this is a media company. Their audience expect to digest that and easily flick through and understand a chart. So they're purposely aimed at doing that. I saw something on this on Twitter that sums this up perfectly, this conundrum that you get in Tableau, which is, sure, we can use these chart types. We expect to see them in a certain way, but it's so tempting to use something else. I'm sure many of you have seen this meme before. It's called a distracted boyfriend. One of my favorite flares of this is, there's Andy there. poor, well, Buzz Lightyear. But they applied this to data visualization. And I love this. One, because the person he's staring at looks like something out of Stranger Things. But also it sums up what many of us go through. There's that best chart for the data. We can say, sure, there's a bar chart. We can size it by sales and color it by profit and display it in a way that people expect to see it. But sometimes there are views that are just so pretty. We just have to use them. The key here is using it in moderation. Now, if I refer back to how we've approached this in building Tableau, we have Show Me for this. Depending on what you have in the view, Show Me will bring up different recommendations based on what's there to consume. If you're using time, it's going to recommend a line chart. If you're using geography, it's going to show a map. The real basic stuff. But this is something I created for, it's called the Grand National. It's a bit like the Kentucky Derby, but just British. And I built this visualization for this event, and I wouldn't say that this horse racing chart is particularly best practice. It's not the most informative view for what we're doing. So the idea is I can select a measure, and then the horses will change based on who has the highest value and make it look a bit like a race. But the reason why this one works so well is because an audience not expects to see data laid out this way, but can understand its relevance. We're talking about horse racing, so racing horses makes sense. I'm also going to try and push to our development team while I'm here that we get this included in Show Me.
Yeah, it's a massive lack of horse race charts.
We need it. I need this for my financial reporting. Speaking of financial reporting, there's a concept of an appropriate layout per audience. Julian mentioned this many times before. But if you look at the reading out there in the industry, they tend to actually clash with one another. First of all, there's Stephen Few, and he believes that dashboards should be one of three things. They should be operational, strategic, or executive, and finally, analytical. But Tableau, and especially Tableau Public, enables us to do so much more. We start getting into the realms of David McCandless, who speaks of dashboards as being beautiful and set in a certain form. They can be bespoke or infographic. If you actually look at the other two books, so the Functional Art and the Big Book of Dashboards, they sit kind of in the middle. They show both sides of the spectrum. I know that also if you go up to Andy Cockgreave while you're here at TC and tell him how much you love his book, he will sign the book for you. So get your hands on a copy and go find him, hunt him down. Again, the community is a great place to find examples of work across the spectrum. This view on the left, I would probably use this for, again, financial operational reporting. Both of these dashboards are actually set up in a similar way. They're both long form. You can scroll down the page and digest the information. But the one on the left focuses on KPIs, telling the audience how well we're doing in particular areas. It almost lets you click through, find out how particular states are doing, see that performance over time, all the stuff we expect to do when we're consuming a financial or operational dashboard. The one on the right is something from Tableau Public, and I love how this view breaks down corruption within different countries using that line chart so you can see how each country changes over time based on their corruption scale, and you can see it moving. But I wouldn't use this, again, I work mostly with financial customers. I wouldn't use this for a P&L statement, for example. But it works perfectly when we're conveying this particular piece of information. I think somebody that summed this up perfectly in my mind is Rodi Zakovic. He's the creator of this Queen dashboard. If you've seen it, it's iconic within Tableau design. But he has this blog post talking about how he needs to rein in the fact that he tries to bend all the lines in his visualization. And I took that and went, well, actually, if you look at this dashboard, and do this to it. All of a sudden, that message is lost. You can see how just applying an image or that title, again referring back to Julian's topic before, makes all the difference in bringing out that message to the audience. It becomes less clear what it's all of a sudden about. And all we've done is remove a title and an image. Rody came to this conclusion that if he's trying to present data to an audience, you shouldn't do this if your audience doesn't expect to see it. And he applied this to a visualization looking at EU potato sector growth. This isn't going to win you awards for Viz of the Day. It's not going to make you Iron Viz any day soon. But actually, if you presented this to your boss, and this was about how your manufacturing rates have changed year over year or month over month, they're probably going to be a lot happier that they received that dashboard as opposed to the Queen one. Although I'd love to see their face if you presented financial reporting that way. Another pro tip that you can apply when we get into the rules of Tableau Public is take a leaf out of Instagram's book. So there's Instagram there on the left, and you can see how just fading pictures in or trying to draw out attention makes you want to click and look at those images. And I've seen that Ben Davis over in the UK does this very well. Just if you look at the little preview bars, the thumbnails, they actually make me want to investigate. That one that I've starred from the Premier League, I just look at that and go, I just want to see what's in there. So it's actually a way to get your audience to click in on your content.
Premier League's football, where you use your feet.
As opposed to hand carry ball, I think.
Exactly.
Thank you for the slow clap. Now in 10.4, we've actually introduced something specifically for layouts that's really, really useful. It's actually my favorite new feature. And it's something called padding and margins. For those of you that joined us last year, it was a Devs on Stage feature, and it got huge applause. One of those people applauding was me. I was so excited to use this. And if I jump into this dashboard very quickly, the idea here is it's using Superstore, and I was trying to create a nice-looking operational dashboard. If I look at the hierarchy of this, you can see all these text boxes. I'm happy to admit that this was something lacking within the product, I'd say before, in terms of providing that space to break up different visuals. I used text boxes to float over and color in a background to provide that padding and margins. And you can see if I expand out this item hierarchy on the left, all the different components of this sheet I had to use just to get it to look a particular way. In 10.4, it's condensed to just this. No longer do I have floating random text boxes. I can actually define the margins around visualizations by using this padding menu here. So you can get really bespoke about the dashboards that you're creating. And if I remove this padding from here, you can see the effect that it has there. So you can actually get very bespoke in how you design it. And it's really, really powerful. And actually, it's something that I absolutely love, so I had to use a heart on this slide as well. So a few things to keep in mind from layout and visuals. The layout and the visuals that you use will always be driven by the appropriateness of your story. So ask yourself, does it meet your audience's requirements? Does it display the answer to the questions that they have in an effective manner? Can they look at it and find the content that they expect to see? You can also use padding and margins to give yourself that space. And who knows, if you apply all the content that we've taught you today, then maybe you'll be upstage for Iron Viz next year, and I'll be one of the people cheering you on.
Thank you. Okay, so let's summarize. So Tableau has turned everyone into a designer. Whether you knew that before, you definitely know that now. You are a designer. Design and UX should follow basic principles of simplicity for success. Did I write that?
Yeah.
Remember to keep in mind the story, theme, concept. It's where you're going to start, the discovery process. The color, very powerful. It can be used to highlight and also hide information. Text, titles. It can misinform if not used correctly, to make sure it's appropriately titled. And then layouts and chart types, as Tom's just covered, making sure you use the right tool for the right job, in this case, the layout, the charts.
But Julian, can you hear that?
No.
No, I hear something. I think it's a cry for more. You want more tips.
I never heard that.
I heard it. I tried to write a few different methods and approaches that you can employ to tweak your dashboards, change things. And I got to this list and just went, no, I need to stop. There's so much more out there, even beyond this list. But there are literally hundreds of ways that you can tweak a design and change a dashboard. But something that we haven't spoken about needs to be taken into consideration, and that's time. Something that's super important in design is this concept of iteration, so you can change things and tweak them, and Tableau enables you to do that in a very intuitive way.
So yeah, with Tableau Public, you can actually republish the same dashboard as long as it has the same title. So you can take some of the tips we've given to you, go back, maybe amp your Vizzes up, let's put it in there, and republish it, and you won't lose your views.
And if I apply this to the most recent dashboard I've created, this is looking at stock crossover analysis. This went through maybe 10 iterations before I got to the point that I went, this is good enough to put onto Tableau Public. I then changed it probably 3-4 more times and went, okay, now it's good enough to take a photo of and stick on Twitter. So I did that. And then I noticed something. And you probably can't see that at the moment, but it's right here. That's right, I spelled between wrong twice. Not once, but twice.
That's not British English, by the way.
That is
not how we spell it.
That is a big fat mistake. But the idea is nothing is ever perfect. So iterate, use the concepts we've spoken about, talk to your audience, find out what they like and don't like about your dashboards, and keep changing and improving, because that's how you'll get to creating powerful and insightful content. So I hope you've enjoyed today's session. We actually have a repeat of this session. It's the graveyard shift on Thursday after Data Night Out. We'll be there. But tell your friends they can be there too. There are also a few related sessions, so great ones like Design with the User in Mind. Dazzling Dashboards lets you take some of these concepts and get hands-on, as well as a Hitchhiker's Guide to Dashboards. I just love that title. And just before we get into questions, then please can you rate us, because we're a bit like Uber drivers in the fact that they won't fly us out here to Vegas to talk to you guys. So if you think we've been useful, then please let us know. And if there are any questions, please head over to the mic and we'll be happy to take them.
They're just here and here for your reference, yeah. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.